Hello, my name is Yewon, and I'm the events chair for the Committee for Political Engagement at Wellesley College. But today I will be the moderator for our Vote Greener Student Climate Activism panel. But yeah, today we have two speakers here with me, and they will quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll get on to the discussion.
I am Suzanna, she, any pronouns. I'm a senior. I'm double majoring in environmental studies and peace and justice studies, and I'm president of EnAct, which is the environmental action student organization on campus.
Hi everyone, I'm Margaret. I use she or hers pronouns. I'm a sophomore double majoring in political science and American studies, and I'm the Committee for Political Engagement's discussions chair.
Amazing. Here you go.
Awesome. Nice to meet both of you. Okay, so since we don't have too much time, I'll get on with the questions. So my first question, I guess, for both of you would be, what has been your experience with legislative advocacy, and what steps would you recommend to begin or further climate change advocacy journeys?
I guess I can start off with that. So when I was in high school, I was an intern for the Go Green Initiative in Northern California, and it was dedicated towards environmental legislative advocacy and education in the Northern California region. This was especially prominent back then because it was right after the wildfires happened in California, and it was so devastating to see a town named Paradise in Northern California just entirely decimated by the flames. A lot of what we were doing that summer of 2020 was lobbying for Senate Bill 1383 to pass in California state legislature, and that basically would charge any municipality, local government, or offices for not being in compliance with California's recycling ordinances, and also educating people how to recycle properly. And the various resources that our partner organizations like Stop Waste and Alameda County's various government offices had to help people figure out how to sort their waste properly.
That's really cool, Margaret.
Anna?
Yeah, the way I've been involved in legislative campaigns and like actions is that I've done a lot of stuff like statewide. I'm from Maryland, and so I've been part of like whenever the emails get sent out or the various I'm a big wildlife conservationist, and so I do a lot of different work with endangered wolves, for example. But I would say that a lot of my experience is municipality. And so I live in a small town, and I do a lot of advocacy within the town for environmental action. And then being at Wellesley College, I think there's a large opportunity to go have an impact in the town of Wellesley as well. And so my first year, we EnAct was part of a climate emergency march, and so then that action led to Wellesley creating kind of a climate action plan, and then the town also declared, or they banned the sale of fur within the town, and a large part of that was because of a student email campaign. So highly suggest getting involved in the town of Wellesley as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. I also did some conservation work when I was in high school because I'm from Hawaii. And I did some work with native plants in Waimea Valley, which is kind of like a sacred site for Hawaiians, and also some work with animals. But that's really cool to hear with the different levels of, activism that you both have engaged with. I guess my second question would be then, are there any legislative changes or changes in general, I guess, that you would like to see to strengthen our governmental commitment to combating climate change, which I know is kind of a large scale question because climate change encompasses a lot of things, but anything that you have in mind.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that the US should declare a climate emergency, because that would allocate funding to climate adaptation and mitigation strategies, and really empower communities that are the most affected, which are BIPOC or low income communities, or as well as communities in places that experience natural disasters and things like that. So I think that's the biggest thing that comes to mind regarding what legislative change needs to occur.
To add on to that a little bit, I think also we need to end our federal practices of building pipelines on indigenous land. I think especially with the Standing Rock pipeline and the peaceful protests surrounding that, it was just remarkable to see how much climate activists and even some celebrities went out to support the cause. And I think that that shows the federal government that that was entirely the wrong decision to be displacing indigenous land and also simultaneously harming the environment. So policies like that in the interest of capitalism and economic profits need to be stopped.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And especially with the pipeline, also in the Appalachian Mountains, along with like the Willow Project and all of the various fossil fuel projects that our country is investing in right now is like awful and is like going against everything that all the strategies that are like going on for climate action and making it all like, okay, so what's the point? So that's a really good point, Margaret.
So kind of along that same vein, obviously there's a lot of stuff happening with fossil fuels, and a lot of people are, calling for that to basically stop, obviously, to put it shortly. But how do you think maybe like an overemphasis on focusing on just what corporations are doing and kind of just reducing emissions takes away from maybe the negative impacts on disadvantaged communities, and how what are your thoughts on the focus on just the impact on climate and not really on communities?
That's a big question. Very, very good questions. I think there's multiple sides to this question. One, that corporations are ultimately the main culprit for climate change. They're also the ones with the largest amount of funding, and so they can afford to go to court and they can afford to campaign and to lobby within Congress as well as within like state legislative processes. And so it's important to hold them accountable and hold them responsible. But also like the question asks, right, if you focus completely on climate change or you focus completely on deforestation or you like any environmental issue, if you focus just on the issue, then you're forgetting about the communities that it's actually affecting and that there's human people that are getting affected by this. And so I think it's really important to hold corporations accountable. I think it's also really important to know that like individuals also have power, because collective action doesn't occur until individuals push for collective action to occur. And so that these communities are the most affected, but often hold, that they're often like the guardians, right, of the environment, like a lot of the indigenous communities and things like that. And so knowing that corporations need to be held accountable, but also knowing that communities hold a lot of power, and both can be true, and that the way that we approach climate change needs to be human-based as much as it is about like environment-based too.
I totally agree with Suzanna. I think that corporations are doing a lot to damage our environment, and that obviously is an issue that needs to be addressed. I think the best way to go about bringing the community focus back into sustainability efforts, especially for low-income and historically marginalized communities that are often, like Suzanna said, the people who are the guardians of the earth, is to be able to center their perspectives and their voices more. A lot of times I've seen sustainability advocates are coming from a position of genuinely wanting to act for the common good and the greater good. But I think it's also important to remember that sustainability is a privilege sometimes, and the ability to live sustainably comes from a great position of economic privilege that not everyone has. So just being cognizant of that, and how our environmental choices can sometimes be a great financial burden that not everyone can afford to take on.
Yeah, and I think you can see that also just like at Wellesley College playing out, in that we have a lot of waste. We have like, right, like we produce a ton of plastic, but then look at like the larger systemic reasons why there's so much plastic involved, right? The last dining hall closes at 10, and so then the only food in your building is from a vending machine that is inherently part of plastic.
Or you order delivery, which emissions, more waste, etc.
Yeah, but then also like ensuring that, because you want these motives to be community-based, and so you would want them to be student-based. And so you're not going to ban single-use plastics without understanding the implications that has on the student body, and like the fact that students wouldn't have food if you were to ban single plastics as of this current moment.
I think that what Suzanna said is a really good point, and it's part of a larger conversation about how our college is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Like, don't get me wrong, our campus is very beautiful, but
Yeah.
I can see how it can be a little bit of a food desert, which provides challenges for sustainability efforts and also equitable access to food and nourishment and nutrition.
Yeah, I think it'd definitely be helpful if maybe we had some form of transportation to like Whole Foods or CVS or something like that. That would definitely help a lot personally. So I guess my last question for this panel would be, how do you think we can mobilize, I guess, students, youth, individuals just in general, maybe using, digital technology, or if you have any other like alternatives that you think might be helpful? Like, do you have any ideas on how individuals can use the power that they have to, advocate for change?
I'm also part of student government cabinet here at Wellesley, and I would highly recommend coming to Senate every Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. in the Green Hall 440, which is also known as the Academic Council Room. And I say this mostly because Dean Horton and Dean Montagna attend Senate every single Monday. So if you have any concerns about sustainability that you directly want to be sent to the Office of Sustainability and Administration, that's a good way to get your voice heard. I've also seen that in the past we've passed a lot of Senate resolutions and ballot initiatives to demonstrate student support for a variety of advocacy efforts. So if anyone wants that to be on an upcoming ballot or to bring a resolution to Senate, that's something that you should think about doing. And it's a good way to demonstrate the student government's and the student body's support for environmental initiatives.
Yeah, I second that. I would also say that one of the biggest things that you can do, especially this year, being 2024, is to vote, and vote for people that support climate action and that believe in climate change. And then I would say that there's a ton of different movements and a ton of different campaigns, especially surrounding Earth Day this year. If you want to learn more, like there's plenty of individuals on campus who are like extremely involved. You plugged Senate. I'm gonna plug EnAct. EnAct is doing a ton of stuff on campus right now. We're building solar panel phone chargers. We're integrating sustainability training into first year orientation. We're working on a food justice summit. And then we're doing a lot of different actions within Boston and the town of Wellesley. And then also, if you want to get involved in the town of Wellesley, every Friday from 3 to 4 outside of town hall, there's Fridays for Future, it's now called something different. It's now called the Wellesley Climate Coalition. But it's a fantastic way to get in touch with town government, Sustainable Wellesley, which is the nonprofit that focuses on sustainability within the town, Extinction Rebellion, 350 Mass. And so a lot of the different things that I've gotten the opportunity to get involved with and like see change occurring has been through that group. And the town of Wellesley is really affluent, right? And so these people, like, they invest in the huge corporations that are basically destroying the planet right now. And so I think that if you incentivize the rich people to take action,
Ones with the money.
that perhaps action would go a little swifter and a little smoother.
I also want to say that it's very important. I know you've heard this a gazillion times probably, but call your legislators, call your representatives, call your senators, tell them that you as their constituent, their voter, that you want certain environmental policies and more environmentally friendly policies to be enacted, especially since it's an election year. I think you can get through to them pretty well. Also, if you want to be part of a larger network of student advocacy among several student governments in the Boston area, you can join Boston Intercollegiate Government's Policy Committee, and that's that basically just takes the direction of whatever you want it to take. So if you want any sustainability efforts to be put forward and to demonstrate policy advocacy and support for that to Massachusetts legislators, you can feel free to join that.
Well, thank you both for your time. This was a very, I think, enriching discussion, although it was very short-lived, unfortunately. But again, thank you for your time and for your thoughts. And hopefully, other people watch this and take away what I did from it too. So yeah, the end.